Okay, we're back with you again for another Q&A session. We're in our old studio. We're here for a couple days and just answering a bunch of questions that y'all had given us on Instagram. The first one, where to buy flower seeds? Everybody wants to know that.
Yeah.
Our main source is probably Johnny's Seeds.
Yes.
For a couple of reasons, but the seed quality is really good. Geo Seeds would be another one. Baker Creek Seeds, you can get some really unique things there.
Swallowtail seeds.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, those would be the main seed companies that we use. The next question is, what flowers are best to plant in hard, sandy-ish soil?
None. You gotta start with the soil.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to start growing flowers the first year, go ahead and try. Amend it as best you can, but and your soil will probably improve every year.
Yeah, but I would say don't plant straight into that. I would say amend it first. Get a soil test done.
Right.
Amend it first. And there are some pretty good workhorses. Like some herbs would do well in not the best of soil.
Yeah.
Like we have our yarrow that we plant is in the worst bed in our property
And it just thrives. Most flowers are gonna like quite a bit of rich soil, whatever.
Well, Russian sage also, we didn't amend that bed very much,
Right.
so that would be another one that's a perennial that you could plant. But most of your cut flowers are gonna do better in rich soil.
Herbs do pretty good in poor soil. You could start with herbs if you want. So of the flowers that we've grown, that we like to grow, that's probably what we would say. Now, we haven't grown every flower there is, so you could just, I guess, Google it. I don't know. But our recommendation would be to amend your soil if you can.
Yes.
The next question we got was how to start seeds ahead. Like, I think this person's saying start them indoors in a colder climate when the last frost date varies so widely. We feel your pain.
I would say stay on the safe side.
Yeah.
We had a couple years there where we got a little anxious. You know, we thought we could get our flowers out earlier, and we ended up having cold spells in May. We had snow in May the one year. The next year we had a lot of, I wonder if we had really heavy frost the first part of May when I was supposed to be planting things out. What happened was the plants got leggy. They got ready. I know some of them even had already set little tiny blooms on the top of their tiny little stalks. And
we held them for 2 weeks, right?
We held them an extra 2 weeks, and they had already been growing for more than they should have, probably.
Right. And they get root bound then too.
Right. So what happened, especially to that one zinnia bed, we planted them and we didn't water them as much as we should have because it got hot after that. And those things fried.
We came out one
day
and it was a graveyard. There was no zinnias.
So I learned after a couple of years, I just decided, you know what? It doesn't matter when the last frost date is. I need to always just be a little more conservative than what. I'm not gonna hope that I can get them out before the last frost date. Because there was one year, this was the anomaly.
Yeah.
You can get fooled by the anomalies. One year we had our last frost the first part of April. And I literally could have planted all my, my frost-free flowers in April and been fine. But that doesn't happen every year. It's like once in how many years?
So pretty much our best practice would be just to wait and maybe a week later than your last frost date. Plan for that to be your safe to plant date.
I also, if seed packets or information online says to start them inside 4 to 6 weeks, I might just start them in 4 weeks before the last frost, because then I've got 2 extra weeks of wiggle room, One other thing, if you do have a lot of things in small plugs, you could bump them up to a bigger cell, which would give them more room to grow. They might, and you'll want to pinch them. If they set a little bloom, you'll want to make sure that gets pinched, because then they'll put more down into their roots. And if they've got a little more room, you can hold them a little better. But if
it'll just be more work.
If you've got 2,000 plants to plant, that might be a little hard to do.
I kind of remember you being a little bit grouchy that spring because she was shuffling. We don't have a greenhouse, so it's a lot of shuffling plants in and out, and it's just a lot more work if you plan for too early.
I was taking probably 20 or 30 trays in and out of my basement in my kitchen to the outside every morning and bringing them back inside. It was madness.
The next question we got was how to simplify your seed calendar. And the person said they don't know why they make things so difficult. We actually wrote a blog post on this a couple weeks ago, and we'll just leave a link in the description below. It just takes you through what you need to know for your seed calendar. We have a resource on our website called the Master List for Sowing and Growing Requirements. It's kind of a long name, but we couldn't think of a better one because it just says what it is. It's our brain during growing season.
It's a chart that shows all the little snippets of information. So like when to start, what germination temperatures, height of the plant, like it's all that information that we've either found or added ourselves over the years. Not every blank has something in it, but whatever information we have, it's there. And then there's also a blank copy for you to make your own if you'd like. What I do is refer to that when I'm actually setting up my seed calendar. You know, if you want to simplify it, you have there how many weeks before the last frost that each thing needs to be planted indoors, and so you can just have a calendar, count back the weeks, and write that down on your chart. So it should be a little easier.
All right, the last two questions came in from the same person. We'll talk about the first part. It says, I have a blank lawn and dream of flowers. Now what?
I'd say educate yourself.
We've been there.
It's easy to get overwhelmed, but I think the best place to start is just with knowledge. You know, you want to know how to do what you're doing. We have an online course that we feel is a really solid beginner course for learning how to plan and grow your cut flower garden.
Bring your dream to life.
Right. We take you through all the steps you'll need to so you don't feel overwhelmed. You can find all the information online, so if you have time and you don't want to spend for an online course, that's fine. But if time is of the essence and you want to learn everything right off the bat, you want a good year this year, I'd say
go check that out.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the best resources in the course is we have a question and answer section on the right. It's called the discussion, I think maybe. And if you have questions that you want answers to that we didn't cover in the course, or if you want us to clarify something, just ask the question there and we'll answer it there.
We do make that a priority. If you've bought the course and you have specific questions, we try to make sure that we get those answered.
We've also made a video a year or two ago, I think 2 years ago, about what to know before you start a flower farm. And I'll put that up here somewhere so you can go watch that as well. A little bit more of a realistic picture maybe.
Counting the cost perhaps.
Yeah. We never want to discourage anybody from starting a flower. We did it. We love it.
Yeah.
You do it too. But just know what you're getting into before you do it.
We think if we would have known a little more what we were getting into, it could have been better along the way.
Yeah.
Because I just remember those first couple years second guessing ourselves so much, feeling overwhelmed, not really knowing what to do.
And being surprised by some of the failures.
But
that's so normal.
Right.
We know that now.
Right. There were a few gardening courses, not many, but they were like a couple $1,000s. And we couldn't afford that.
We didn't have that to put in.
And I remember us thinking, you know, once we get it figured out, it would be great to have an affordable course. But you don't need to be overwhelmed.
Okay, so the second part of the question was, and realistically, how much ballpark money is required to start something small? How small?
That depends.
It depends on a lot of things. Do you have tools? Do you have any kind of infrastructure? Probably not. What do you want to do with your flowers? Because if you need seed starting supplies for starting stuff indoors, that's probably going to be half of your startup.
Right.
Are you planning to put in landscape fabric, any hoops, any low tunnels?
Right. So right off the bat, if you wanted to go real cheap, if you didn't want to spend much, what I would do is start your stuff inside or like do winter sowing in gallon jugs, and then have grass paths and just till like a strip for the beds. You know, that would be like the cheapest way to go.
Right.
But then if you really want to set yourself up for success and you think this is something you want to keep on doing, you know, buy the lights. You'll have healthy plants sooner. Yeah, just buy some of those tools. It may take $2,000 if you're buying all the equipment.
And it depends how much. Like seeds and plugs, those all cost money too. Perennials, if you're going to do those.
Right.
I think we would say a ballpark is $2,000 to $5,000, but that may be too high or too low.
Right. It just depends how big your garden is. And what all you're buying.
Right.
It depends. That's a vague answer. Sorry, but it does really.
But we say this over and over again. I think we do anyhow. Start small and start with what you've got. Don't go ahead and until you know that you like to grow flowers, don't put a lot of money into it.
I'll just tell you what we had. I think we had like $3,000 to start. And that went into
that was 8 years ago.
Yeah, 8 years ago. So calculate for inflammation. Calculate for inflation. So that was landscape fabric, that was seeds, that was a few tools. There's some startup costs. We had to pay a few feet, like license. We bought
peonies.
We had done a little bit of gardening before, so we had a plot that was good for peonies.
Right.
We bought some lights. We bought a rack, a heat mat. We have a page with a bunch of tools on our website, so we'll link that if you want to know what some of those startup tools might be that you might want.
Sprayers. You know.
Right. So we had some stuff we had to buy, and I would say we wouldn't have used all of that right away. It took a little bit. But see, I'm going to say we probably only have about 1/8 of an acre.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have that much to start with.
Right.
So it was pretty small. I don't know what the ballpark is.
The gardener determines the ballpark. Our Papa Deer would probably put 20,000 into startup garden. So that concludes the second Q&A, and stay tuned for part 3.